Yo, microphone check, make it a microphone check. Give it a microphone, I make the microphone dead. Don't step to me, newbie, I could truly be moody. I could have played the fucking Grinch in the movies. I've been a part-time shadow cat.
Hello, citizens, it's Sage, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here and you have never seen my face before, hi, welcome. My name is Sage, and I hope you're here to stay. And if this is not your first time seeing my face, and you are an old-time citizen or old-time subby, what's good, what's popping with you? I am bringing you all my book review. And today's book review, as you can tell by the title of this video, will be on Children of Blood and Bone, yes, by Miss Tomi. So I pronounce it Tomi Adeyemi. I'm so sorry. But yes, you guys, I will be covering the first book in the soon-to-be trilogy of books for the Children of Blood and Bone series. I read this book as a part of a quote-unquote project for during sophomore year, so it's been about 2 years since I've read this. Luckily, I got to choose the book that I read for that project, so this was a result out of it. And as you can see, I don't have the cover on it. I actually prefer this over the original cover, which is over here in the bag that I got the book in. So like, I still have like the cover to it, but I just prefer the way that this looks. So to get started, I'm gonna just talk about like, you know, the little like synopsis of the book, you know, because hopefully if you're watching this video, you have read it, or if you're thinking about reading it, you know, I can fill you in. So essentially, this book is set in a very magical land, and it is a land that unfortunately has had most of its magic stripped away by the kingdom because they are fearful of the power that these people called magi, who are people who are inherently are born with magic typically. They're fearful of what their powers can do. There's all different types of magi. People who can heal, people who can read minds, people who can bring back the dead, essential stuff like that. And it's really, really cool because it's like both sides are fearful of the other because of the other's power, if that makes sense. So about 3-4-ish years, I want to say, from like the actual start of the story, the king of the royal empire took away magic, and the main character Zelly is trying to restore magic because she was, you know, inherently born without it. Now, to talk about the characters some and how I felt about the story as a whole, for one, I love the story, okay? I love the story. Me and my friends and I were all reading this book. We all ended up like choosing this book for the most part. Well, most of us did. But most of us chose it, and it ended up being something that we could like talk about. Even now I talk about this and the sequel, because I do have the sequel. Have not finished the sequel, but I do have it. And we talk about just how good it was and how well like planned out it was and how excited we are to see like where the journey goes from here. Essentially what I gathered was that it is sort of like in real life how people are always afraid of the unknown, you know, and how people who fear the unknown tend to exaggerate that fear in ways that are oppressive or highly defensive when they don't need to be. If that makes any sense at all. One thing I really would say was done well was the way that Zelly, the main character, was portrayed. She is what would be classified as a Reaper. Her powers that she initially inherited from her mother, who was also a Reaper, is they can essentially like communicate or feel death. And they can, you know, like they have a stronger connection with the dead and stuff like that. And I don't know if this is just me, but people who in stories like this where it's like a bunch of fantasy and then it's like people who can, you know, either perform necromancy or like talk to the dead or stuff like that, it typically interests me because I know that it's for a lot of characters in like say anime or books or even regular TV shows. When it happens, it is typically something that affects that character either a positive way or a negative way. Say for instance, if you watch Umbrella Academy, you know Klaus, he can communicate with the dead. For Klaus, it's too much. So for him, it's like stressful to communicate with the dead because he doesn't have like a full control over his powers, and he never really did, if that makes sense. So he used substances to kind of like drown out his powers. Whereas for Zelly, she was born without the powers. So when she was able to, spoiler warning, when she was able to get her powers back, it was agonizing because she wasn't used to it, and there was nobody to like train her because most of the Reapers had got wiped out in the battle and stuff like that. So you see, like it's a pro and con to every like situation to that, which is why it's always interesting to me whenever there's a character like that. And that just goes to show how well this book was written. Okay, there is another main character who recently at the end of book 1 we discovered does also have some sort of powers. And that is Princess Amari. Amari is the crown princess to the throne of the royal empire, yada, yada, yada. You know how that typically goes. She is very rebellious. She is the peacemaker, if that makes sense. She is okay with magic. She feels like magic is not something that should be feared. As her, I want to say her handmaiden or something like that, she could use magic. She was a magi inherently, but so she could see firsthand how the royal kingdom treated magi and stuff like that. It was very, very oppressive, and essentially something in her brain clicked and snapped when her father ended up killing her handmaiden after some servants had came back to essentially give the king these artifacts that trigger magic, that awaken magic within magi. So he killed her after the discovery that she can use magic and the type of magic and yada, yada, yada. You know, that whole fear thing that I was talking about. Yeah. Amari as a character, when you see her grow, when you see the connection that she eventually makes with Zelly, because Zelly at first is kind of like a little when she finds out that Amari is actually the princess and stuff like that. Their relationship, to see it grow to be what it is now, is very interesting because it's very like on and off type of thing, because they're both weary of each other because they both have these preconceived notions of how the royal army treats magi, or how the magi or like how magi have magic. And it's just that type of like back and forth that is interesting to see in really any type of book. Connection that she ends up making with Zelly's older brother Zane is also very special, and I hope to see that explored more when I go on to finish the second book. Because y'all, when I say the possible ships that sprout out of this series, because I blame the fact that I'm a serial romantic, and that this type of stories that have even the littlest, tiniest bit of romance in it, it just captures my soul, and I must obtain it. But with that being said, I do think that Amari as a character has a lot to grow, and I am excited to see what they end up doing with her character in terms of her magic, because in the end of the book, because we're jumping around here, At the end of the book, when magic is restored, essentially, it is restored to the point of origin. So that means that everybody who could have used magic in a past life, ancestor, whatever, what have you, not just Magi, but also the royal family, because what the king did not know was that the royal family in the past could also use magic. It had gotten stripped away because they don't know how to act, essentially. So magic returned to the point of origin, and essentially everybody ended up with magic. Not everybody, but everybody ended up with magic. So we found out that she is what's called a lighter. And a lighter is someone who oversees things like lightness and darkness. So they can control light, dark, essentially, or something like that. Lighters haven't been explored in the first book. So I'm pretty sure that that is something that Adeyemi decides to expand on in the second book, and possibly in the third book as well. Moving on in characters, my favorite troubled man, Anan, the crown prince of the royal empire. Anan is trouble in paradise, honestly. Like, that's the best way to describe him. He is just like his father, fears magic, even though it doesn't really exist anymore. And, you know, when the artifacts were brought up, and it was discovered that there was more than just the 2 artifacts that had been found, or I think they had found one of them, but the other one had got lost. Anyways, when they discovered that there was more than just the 1 or 2 artifacts that the royal guards had found that were shown to the king, Anan was essentially sent out to go and find the other ones. Now, Zelly had ended up finding one before him, thus like returning her powers. But essentially, but at that point, you know, Zelly had gone and tried to restore magic by going to this temple that would initially like that had the I believe it was like the prophecy or something like that to explain like how to bring magic back and stuff like that. And that is where she first encountered Anan, if I'm remembering correctly. And essentially Anan went in there and he came out and he was not the same. And by not the same, I mean that night, you know, they had all gone their separate ways. They had essentially Anan had lost track of Zelly and the crew. Also in an attempt to try to get his sister back, to try to find her. Yeah. And he had a dream that essentially led him to see Zelly, and Zelly could see him. They both didn't know what was going on. Eventually it is shown to us that, or really like revealed to us, that Anan has powers. Anan also has this white streak in his hair. Now, for anyone who doesn't know more context on the story, all Magi have white hair. So they have really rich dark skin and white hair. So a good interpretation would be the cover of the second book. This is a picture of Zelly. White hair, rich dark skin. And Anan's hair color, naturally, I do not remember what it was. I just know that they always talked about how he had this white streak in his hair that was started to get more and more noticeable as his powers grew. I think he was a dreamer, I think is what they would call it. And essentially you could like reach people in their dreams and stuff like that. And kind of like, yeah, it was kind of like a way of telepathy, but like not really. And his powers, along with Zelly's, as they grew stronger, as the story went on, it was eating away at him because now he became the thing that he feared. And it was really interesting to see the conflict of him go back and forth of, you know, is he really, you know, allowed to even be in the kingdom? Like, what would his father think if he found out? Because the king, he's ruthless. There would be no saving Anan had the king found out. And that was essentially his whole inner conflict with himself. So that, to see his growth, because, you know, that main ship between him and Zelly, which I was rooting for. I'm not gonna spoil it, but I was rooting for it. So very well written character. Anon was definitely my favorite character. He is definitely my favorite character in the entire series. And I have fingers crossed for him in the second book. And when you get to the end of the first book, you will understand what I'm saying. We're gonna just talk about the king real quick. But essentially, the king Saran, yeah, him, is a horrible person. He is a horrible person. He is the initial reason as to why magic no longer exists in the country, and he essentially has this system where not only magi are heavily oppressed, but they are treated like the scum of the earth. Like, they charge really, really, really high taxes on them, and even though they know that they can't really pay them, and if they defy them, they're either killed or sent to the prison that's in the Royal Kingdom. And not even just in the Royal Kingdom, but you will see throughout the first, and I'm sure the second book, that there are a lot of places in where magi were being held captive and being used as slaves, essentially, because they were different inheritedly, even though he had taken away magic. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, he fears something that can't even happen because of him. He fears the unknown. He fears what could happen had magic been able to return, which is why he was collecting the artifacts, to try to get rid of them, to try to destroy magic for good. I really dislike talking about him myself because of one particular scene that happens during the big battle or whatever, or during, like, towards like the middle-ish part of the book with Zelly, and I just whew. He is definitely a character that I feel like got exposed to magic in a way that just didn't rub him the right way, or he was just always an evil man. I don't know, but yeah, essentially that's my spiel on him, and I'm gonna stop talking about him because he gets on my nerves. That was my little, like, analysis, book talk, book review of the Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. Still probably butchering that name. I want to thank you all for watching. Essentially, I would give the book a 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10. It was a great book. I'm really excited to finish reading the second one, and I'm excited to see what that has to say in terms of the characters that I mentioned today. I hope that all of you who have not read it will get a chance to read the book on your own time someday. And if you want me to review the second book when I finish it, then let me know in the comments down below. I love hearing what you guys got to say. I feel like the comment section be kind of dry, so I'm just trying to, up the engagement. But yes, you guys, so Children of Blood and Bone, pick it up at your local Barnes and Nobles. That's my favorite store. But places like Books A Million and stuff like that work too. Very, very, very cool book. Love it. I really do need to reread it though, because it's been a solid 2 years, and I just picked up the second book where the first book left off, essentially. And yes, with that being said, you guys, like, comment, subscribe, post notification button, hit it to see more videos just like this. I love doing book reviews because I'm a book nerd. And with that being said, I will see you all on the flip side. Bye.